Are you ready to disrupt? Welcome back to the Disrupt Media channel. Michael Heaver here alongside my co-host Andre Walker. And Andre, what a fantastic response we've had to the launch of this channel and our first episode.
Yeah, who knew that stuff like this was popular? Because if you watched something like the BBC or Sky News, you'd think that nobody agreed with us. Nobody was patriotic. Nobody believed in leaving the European Union. The referendum was just a fluke, I think, according to these people. I think that you and I have made a major step forward here, but we couldn't do it without the support of everybody on the channel. I think it's so important that we start getting the truth out, start getting proper news out there, and that people are supportive of it. So rock on, baby.
Absolutely right. And guys, thanks so much for being subscribers here on the channel. Make sure you do hit that subscribe button and the bell. We do not want you to miss any episode of what we're doing. Me and Andre are going to be very active on this. And we start off today, Andre, on the issue of freedom of speech, a poll that I believe was commissioned by Lawrence Fox's Reclaim Party, Savanta Conrad's poll. Just 1 in 8, 12% now in this country believe people have greater freedom to speak than they did 5 years ago. Freedom of speech under threat, 50% of people say, compared with less than a quarter, 24%, who disagree. What do you make of that, Andre?
Yeah, 49% was the exact figure, and that's the number of people who believe that they have fewer freedoms in terms of freedom of speech than they had 5 years ago. Well, first of all, I don't think that this is a paranoid delusion. I think that it is genuinely absolutely right. And what we see with this cancel culture is the way that people are bullied and harangued. I mean, you know, you look at guys like us, we are in a better position than most people because we are able to say what we think, though we're still constrained. But you have a normal job, if you're a plumber or, God forbid, a teacher, and you express anything that's remotely patriotic or pro-Brexit or anti-woke, and you can be in very real trouble. And I think that it is something that is incredibly dangerous. I always say that at the fall of the Soviet Union, the whole idea of socialist economics and socialist systems of government were discredited. Nobody now is going to stand up, perhaps apart from Ash Sarkar, and say that they are a communist. But these extremists have not disappeared. And what they're now trying to do is bring in their system of government, really by divide and rule, threaten people, make it impossible for them to speak, and then set everybody against each other by constantly not talking about us as British people, but talking about, you know, whatever background we're from, or, you know, what age you are or what race you are. And I think it's really pretty despicable, and we shouldn't have let them get away with it.
Yeah, it's a sort of worrying trend of real intolerance from some hardline far leftists. And the most recent case study, if you look, is what we've discussed this before, Andre, is GB News. People actually taking the time to try and boycott a channel that's not even launched because they're so intellectually frail. They can't seem to comprehend that people may have a different perspective to them. And, you know, I'm someone who, when it comes to British media, I welcome a plethora of views, whether on the left or the right, because giving people new choices, I see as a positive thing. And there just seems to be this growing intolerance we're seeing, and it has to be said, it's on the far left, that they basically don't want people who disagree with them to even have a voice. And that is a very, very dangerous thing, Andre, is it not?
Absolutely. And there's a YouTube channel out there. I won't say what it is because I'm not interested in personally criticising anybody. But effectively, the whole channel is dedicated to calling people who voted for Brexit stupid. And all the guy does, he gets videos from people like you and me, pauses them and makes snarky remarks all the way through. That's incredibly popular. If you look at what's behind this, it's very often a hatred of ordinary working class people, a hatred of people who are patriotic, a disdain for people who believe in Christianity. And of course, I look at the newspaper, The New European, which I think is a good product, right? I wouldn't particularly read it myself. If you were to have The New Anti-European as a newspaper, it would be hunted down, the shops wouldn't stock it, and The Guardian would be constantly running articles about every journalist being some sort of extremist. It's what is good for the goose is not good for the gander.
Well, we like to be positive on this channel. It's interesting to see, a potential fight back on behalf of free speech, because what's also been reported at the weekend from the Sunday Telegraph was that ministers will fine universities which stifle freedom of speech and tell heritage groups that public funds must never be used for political purposes in a major new bid to torpedo efforts at rewriting Britain's history. Gavin Williamson, the Education Secretary, of course, will announce this week that a free speech champion will be given powers to defend free speech and academic freedom on campuses. Andre, this is something I think that is long, long overdue.
It's so worrying, this, because this idea where universities can no longer be bastions of free speech, where academics can be sacked for having a particular viewpoint. I mean, that is an innovation. You know, even in times of less tolerance, in the Victorian era and so on and so forth, very few academics were fired for holding a view that was contrary to public opinion. Very few indeed. And so universities now are not broadening the mind of their students, they're narrowing their mind. And that actually, whatever way you look at it, has an impact on the democracy of this country, but also the economic power of this country. So well done, Gavin Williamson. I'll tell you something about Gavin Williamson. You know, he's not the sharpest tool in the box, and he's a bit like Private Pike from Dad's Army. But I will tell you something, Gavin Williamson is fantastic in what he does in terms of standing up for the decent people, the ordinary working class people, and students who want to go to university for a proper education.
There just seems to be, in terms of some of the institutions in this country, it seems to me that there's just a complete lack of bottle. And that as soon as they get, 40 to 50 hardline far lefters kick up a fuss because somebody's saying something or going to say something on a university campus that they may not agree with, they kick off about it. And it seems to me time after time after time, the institutions cave in. Hopefully, this is the beginning of actually having some proper free speech back on campuses and not allowing this sort of bullying element. As I said earlier, very intolerant of anyone that doesn't see the world the way they do, actually shutting down honest and open debate. And yeah, Andre, as you mentioned, we want to turn to Ofcom now. Another report warning as for BBC as government says Ofcom chairman must ensure news is reported with due impartiality. The new job specification will be seen as an instruction to take a tougher line with broadcasters on slanted reporting against the Tories. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm always slightly nervous about this. The reason is because Ofcom as a concept is not a problem. My issue is the sort of people that get into it. Remember, all of these appointments are all advertised in The Guardian, and very often these people will be from the left. And so I would rather have no regulation than have Ofcom come in and do this. But look, I'm not against the idea of making Ofcom more centre. I'm not against the idea of Ofcom attempting to force broadcasts to have more balance. By the way, it's slightly odd. Ofcom don't regulate the BBC. What they do is they publish an annual report on the BBC's impartiality. So I think we need to do something about it, but I'm just not sure that this is anything more than a sticking plaster. I think the real solution is to allow a plurality of news out there, and I think that is the way to solve the problem. And part of it is, whatever way you look at it, and people sometimes criticise me for having a downer on the BBC. The problem is we cannot have a fair and free market with one organisation so dominant and so wealthy. That's why you have to break up the BBC in order to make news in this country fair and balanced.
And I'll give you one example, Andre, of how I think we're over-regulated in this sphere in this country. You talk about the sort of domination of the BBC in various aspects. One of the big losers from that, of course, are things like local radio, because you've got the BBC with such a weight of resources and versus smaller regional or local outlets that are struggling. Why have we got this situation now where political parties and campaign groups can pay to have political advertising on social media, but can't have it on TV and can't have it on radio? Wouldn't it be an amazing shot in the arm for local radio, for instance, local radio stations, if political parties and political campaign groups, of course there'd be some regulation, but were able to spend money to reach people, to improve turnouts via local radio, local TV stations, etc. Surely that is an area where we should actually be looking, where investment could go in and increase turnout at the same time. That to me does not make sense. How can you have adverts now on Facebook, on Twitter, that people can pay to advertise, but not on TV or radio? Why?
I lament the fall of local newspapers, and there's various reasons for that. But one of the things that made it worse was when the BBC came in and started all of these local websites. They're massively funded. Suddenly they are able now to produce local news in a way that local press can't. The local press start losing advertising left, right, and centre. And actually, remember, who is the big beneficiary? And you alluded to this. It's big tech. Right, so you can't advertise on TV, okay, so you just advertise on YouTube instead, and so consequently, traditional British broadcasters get nothing, whereas foreign companies get everything. And it's exactly the same, by the way, with the whole system that you've got for things like business rates and indeed the lockdown. Where do you get your shopping now? You get it from Amazon, and so whereas your local businesses are being very severely damaged, the winners are, as usual, foreign big tech companies. Now, I'm not against YouTube or Amazon, but I'm saying that there should be a level playing field here that just doesn't exist.
Well, look, guys, thanks again for watching. Me and Andre are going to be doing regular shows here on the Disrupt Media channel. I hope you're enjoying what we're doing here. Do make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell so you don't miss the next episode. And please do leave any comments, any feedback below in the comments. We're big boys, we can take it. But thanks again for your support. Andre, anything else to say?
Well, when you say we're big boys, I think getting bigger all the time due to this lockdown. But yeah, look, we absolutely can't wait to get this going. And the more people subscribe, the more work we're able to do on it. And I just genuinely think this is a tiny embryo that's going to grow into something absolutely huge. And I think we need everyone's support to do that.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching again, guys. Take care. We'll see you soon.